Great. So we have now set up both Frappe React SDK as well as our benches, and now we can finally start building. But before that, let's actually, so episode 4 will be login with email and password, right? And then in episode 5, we're going to look at logging in with, let's say, an API key and secret instead of an email and password. But before we get there and before we start building our login page, we need to address this issue. It says WebSocket connection, was closed before the connection is established. Even if you refresh, this comes up. This only happens on your React dev server, so on localhost 8080. It does not happen on production. And the reason for that, I had to debug, was that we haven't yet enabled developer mode. So if we enable developer mode on our bench, using this command, and let's say we restart our bench, then this error should go away. See, so that hopefully fixes the socket error in your case as well. If you look at the socket events, you will see that we have site namespaced socket events coming in to our system. Okay, cool. So now what we need to do is first we'll create a login page, a login component, and this is just going to be pure React, right? And the scope for this particular video would just be to go in our app.tsx. We won't set up routing yet. We'll just create a login component and allow a user to enter in their username or email and password and login. So let's look at not this. Yeah. So in my src directory, I have an assets folder, right? What I'll do is that I'll also create a folder called pages, and I'll create a folder called components. Sorry, that's a file. Yeah. Components. So in pages, let's create a page for authentication. So I'm going to keep it in auth / and then login.tsx, right? So src pages, auth is another folder, and then login.tsx, and then I can do a tarafce, and I have a default exported component for login. I can call this component over here, so login, and that should be it, and we should see just login over here. Let me close this out. Yeah, we should see login over here. Now what we can do is we can use components in Radix UI to build out our input form. So we'll do that quickly. We also have React hook form, if you remember. So we'll first start by declaring our types for our login page, right? So in a login form, right, you just need a username, which would be a string, and a password, which would be a string, right? We don't have any props. We can remove this. In fact, we can remove the import for React as well. Yep. Okay. We'll first start by declaring a form. If you are not familiar with React hook form, then you can also use direct state variables for these, right? In fact, I mean, I'm also sort of tempted to use direct state variables because I feel like that will address more number of people. This might be more confusing. So, okay, let's actually remove React hook from, and then let's try building the form from scratch using just React. So use state, and the type will be string. By default, it's an empty string. Username, set username, right? Password, set password. Great. Now we have a div. What I want is my login to be centered on the screen. So it should be somewhere over here in a card probably. So let's try doing that. So for that, we can do we can use something called as box in Radix UI themes, right? But instead of a box, let's actually try doing a flex, right? Because then in a flex, we can do an align center and justify center. You could also do this with Tailwind, and it would be the same, right? Okay. Now Radix does have a container as well. Constrains the maximum width of page content. I mean, this is also pretty cool, but we're using flex to make it centered on the page. Next, we can use a card. They should have a card over here. We'll use a card, something like this, to quickly build this layout out. So let's do a card. Yep, card, and then we can have a heading. It says login, and for every, so box is basically just a simple div, right? And we sort of need a label. So let's see what they have for label. I'm not sure. They have text field, which we would need. What do they have for label? They don't have anything for label as such. I guess they're just using the text as a label. So we'll also do the same. Text as label. And then we can use a name or email, right? And we need to import text from Radix UI themes. Then we can do an input. So an input, a text field input, or I think they have something called as text field. Yeah, I'll just copy this and remove a bunch of things from there. And then just import text field here. Don't need the slot. That's all right. Username, and then on my on change, I can set this, and value would be username, right? Similarly, I can do the same thing with password. I'll just copy this over, and then password, but over here my type would be password, right? Placeholder will be star. On change, let's do set password, and value would be password. Great. Let's see how that looks. Okay, not bad. We just need to center it even further. So this flex, we need to make its height 100 VH and its width 100 VW. Now in Radix UI there's no such thing, so we can just use class name, and let's actually test if Tailwind is working, right? And then for this, for the card, let's look at the card component again. Yeah, card, they basically recommend either inline styling or something similar. So card would be, I don't know, you can just do a class name and then do a width. It should be set the width as 64. Would that do it? Nope. Maybe just set a value directly. So like, I don't know, 60 VW. Yeah, something like that. Let's do 40 VW, and then min height could be, let's see, 80. Yep, Okay, we also need to increase the padding a little bit, so maybe we add an additional padding of 2, and we can do a flex and a gap of 2 between them, and then flex call is what we need, I guess, or maybe we use something else. So let's do this. Let's use another flex. So basically I want the heading, the different boxes to have a little bit of spacing between them, and so that's why direction would be column, yeah, and then gap would be 2. So there's a little bit more spacing, and I think that's pretty much it. We just need a button. So my goal would not be to make it look pretty right now. I think that we can, maybe consider in a separate video. For now, the goal is to just have just show you how to use Radix. So yeah, we have a button, and then we need a submit function, right? So const on submit, or on submit sounds better. On submit, right? We would basically need to pass in the username and the password to Frappe, to Frappe React SDK, and then Frappe React SDK would handle it from there. So we'll just add this over here, and on submit, and just test whether all of this is working or not, right? And then we'll go into Frappe React SDK. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, now there's no issue. Okay, if I click on login, so it does say, gives me the output. Now this was all markup, and you can play around with it as much as you want to. I'll make it look pretty later, right? By the time I commit this code, you'll see the markup would be a little bit different, but the main part over here is the logic, right? And so for that logic, we have a hook called useFrappeAuth. Now this useFrappeAuth hook, it takes in some options. We won't get into that, right? This is basically what this hook would do, is that it would first check whether the user is already logged in or not. And it shows us that in current user, right? So for example, if I just print current user over here in my markup, then you'll see my current user is administrator, and that's because I'm already logged in. So we will handle this in a future video where we set up routing, and we do not show this page at all if it's already logged in. For the purposes of this video, I'll just log out from here, from my Frappe interface, and then refresh, and you'll see that the current user is currently undefined, right? So useFrappeAuth returns the current user, but it also has some functions. It has a function called login. It has a function called logout. It's got a function for update current user. What update current user would do is, let's say that you want to fetch the current user again, right? For some reason, you won't really need it in most cases, but if you wanted to, let's say, just refresh the current user, you could do this. Logout, as it sounds, is a simple function that just logs the user out. Login is again a simple function that logs the user in. And we also have error. We would need that error to show. And we have a get user cookie function, which is nothing but what it would do is that it would look at the user cookies that have been set. The user cookie usually has the image, the full name, the user ID, so on and so forth, right? Only a few details. Very, very helpful if you want to use get user cookie on, let's say, a nav bar at the top, and you want to show the name of the user or something, right? And an avatar So we won't need get user cookie now. We will need error. The other things that are there is loading. We would need this so that we can disable the button and the form fields when the form is being submitted. So how do we log the user in? Well, simple. We just call login and then pass it the username and password. If your variable names are a little different, you can do something like this. In our case, it was the same, and that's it. And then if you want to look at the response, you could do that over here, right? And console.log, and you'll have a response, right? Now this would log the user in. We'll also create another button so that we can just test, but I'll remove this from our final version to log the user out, right? And so then we'll see what happens to the current user. So we have login and we have logout here. Okay. And for error, what we'll have to do is we'll show the error in a callout. So they have a component for that. It's called callout, and we'll set the color to be as red. So we'll say if there is an error, right, then we want to show a callout dot root. Do we need an icon? We probably don't need an icon. Yeah, we don't need an icon for now. We just need to do callout.text, right? And over here we want to show the error. Now the problem over here is that the error is an object. So for now we'll just do a json.stringify error. But one thing that I'll do is that we have a common component that we've created. Anytime we have errors, etc., what we do is we look at the error object and sort of figure out what the error is, like the user readable, human readable text, and we show that. So we have that component ready. We use it on Raven. We'll bring it to this project as well. So this would actually just turn into an error banner which will take in the error, and that's it. So but for now, this is what we have. If there's an error, show a call out. We'll set the color to red, and yeah, if it's loading, so we can just do disabled if it's loading, right? I think that should be it. So let's look at it. We have a logout button over here. Let's make the color of the logout button like gray or something so that it's different. Yeah, okay. So let's try logging in. It did throw an error, but oh, okay, yeah, sorry. So this error is not for the login function, right? This error is when it's not able to fetch the current user at all. So we need to handle the error over here. We'll create another variable called login error. Yeah, I forgot about that. So set login error, and we'll just do error. We'll just show the whole thing. Okay. So login error, and so over here we need to show the login error instead of the error. So again, the login function takes in the username, password, returns a promise, right? And we look at how that works now. So if you look at login, it does throw an error. You'll see it makes a post call, and there is this entire JSON that was returned. We'll convert this to a nice looking error banner which just says, invalid login credentials. But so it works. Now let's look at, if I add this as administrator and in my password I pass an admin, what does it do? So it does log in. Wait. Oh, I did not spell administrator correctly. Yep. So it does do administrator. I need to reset this error, so I can do that in my code. I can just do set login error as undefined. Login error is not a string, it's any for now. Yeah, if I do a login, you see it's administrator. If I do a logout, administrator goes away. If I have an invalid password, throws an error. If I again do a logout, I mean, it doesn't really matter because I'm not really logged in. And then let's log in again. So yeah, that's how you would use standard email password authentication in Frappe React SDK. You have the useFrappeAuth hook, which gives you the current user, which is just the user ID of the current user. This could be undefined, null, or string, right? It would be null or undefined if the user is not logged in. The login function takes in a bunch of parameters for logging in. Now, you might also want to, handle two-factor authentication on your React apps, and we have recently added support on Frappe React SDK for those, but we'll cover that in a separate video. Basically, you would pass in more things like the OTP, the temp ID with your login credentials, right? So first you would log in, you would look at the response, and if the response says, OTP, whatever it takes, it gives you a TMP ID, right? Once the user enters in the OTP, you would again call in the login function, but pass it the OTP and the temp ID, and it would handle that. So that's how you would handle two-factor authentication, but not in the scope of this video. I hope that is clear. I'll update this markup and again push it to the code base. In the next video, we'll cover authentication using API keys and secret. Okay, cool. Thanks. Bye.